It's been an interesting week. So, a week ago, I thought I'll do a couple of vids and chuck them on YouTube. I'm not after likes, I'm not after subscribes. I'm just wanting to put stuff up here so that there are occasions, I digress a bit, there are occasions when my mental health gets bad. For various reasons, the loss of my stepson being the primary one. He died from cancer in 2019 on April the 4th. He was 27 years old and not quite 2 months. So that was quite harrowing. It wasn't quite as harrowing as the bit prior to that. And he was born in 1992, which is the same year the Amiga 1200 came out. And I loved the Amiga 1200. I got my first one in 1992. Obviously that was the end of 1992, by which point my stepson had been alive for some time. And my Amiga 1200 I no longer have. I have a different Amiga 1200 that I was gifted while my stepson was still alive by a close friend. And it's already older than my stepson was when he died. So, my stepson was a keen gamer. He loved PC, he loved Stargate, he loved loads of things on the internet. He loved taking the piss out of people, he loved banter, he loved dark humour, he loved Nine Inch Nails, who I also love but really can't listen to these days. And all of these things have, over time, combined with too much alcohol, given me some issues, caused me some difficulties, caused me some real problems with handling life, and given me occasions where I've had to pause, take a step back, take some time out, and try and think about what it is in life that helps you deal with things like grief and bereavement. Now, my stepson lost his dad when he was young. I think he was 4 or 5 years old. His uncle died the year after, and around about the same time his mother's boyfriend died in a car accident. So he suffered a lot of loss, and he ended up in the so-called unit at school where people with difficulties such as autism or PTSD may end up, whether they're having difficulties in school. He was the first child at that school that got out of the unit, and the process was apparently quite difficult because they'd never done it before. Anyway, move on many years. When he was 12 years old, I met him in a pub I used to frequent, as did his mother, and we had a game of chess. And the little bastard beat me. To quantify that statement, he was an illegitimate child of 2 parents who were not married, so I don't use it in the swearing term. And he knew it from me was a term of endearment. Anyway, I digress. Things that won't help you with dealing with grief. Long term, one thing that won't help you with dealing with grief is suppressing everything about the person that you've lost. Avoiding thinking about them. Avoiding facing difficult situations. Yeah, it'll help initially, and you need to do that initially, or some people need to do that initially, some don't. Everybody's different. But if you ignore the loss, and if you push to the back of the mind the pain, the suffering, and all the other heartache that went on, you don't afford your mind the ability to deal with this stuff. And if you don't think about things, you won't process it, you won't deal with it, you won't acknowledge with it. And a lot of people will shut off into a shell. I mean, I have. I'm kind of a hermit, but when I was a teenager, I was mostly in my room playing with my Amiga 1200. Very little has changed in that respect. I love being in my room playing with my Amiga 1200. What's not to like? But if you don't deal with the stuff that's gone on, if you don't deal with how you feel, if you don't deal with the difficult thoughts, if you don't deal with those things, if you don't expose yourself to them, if you cut yourselves off from them entirely, you are not going to be able to deal with it. Or it may be harder to deal with it. At least my experience has been that you just don't deal with it at all. So, April the 4th, 2019 he died. And it's now, what, October the 7th, 2022? So, in those 3 years, he died. His mother and I had extreme difficulties, had to deal with the grief and depression during the tail end of 2019. I planned a first night out for a Friday in March 2020, which was cancelled due to the lockdown starting because of coronavirus. So, having gone from, before my stepson died, isolating from people in order to protect him when he was having chemo, and to protect other people from the potential risk that chemo, which may be radioactive, may have on other people. All that isolation to try and save him. Anyway, then the grief and the isolation because of the grief, then the isolation because of the lockdown because of coronavirus. That actually suits me. I like going into I like going into a supermarket and people staying away from me. I like having a distance between other people and myself because people being close to me makes me feel uncomfortable. That's not related to grief. That's just the way I am, and that's just the way I've always been. It's just one of those things. People I know and I'm really close to is an entirely different matter, but I could count them on the fingers of one hand using binary. Might struggle in decimal. Anyway, gaming is good for the soul. Spending your entire time just playing games is not dealing with the shit that you went through. But spending your time playing no games, having no fun, putting no joy into your life, doesn't necessarily help the healing process. You may feel guilty at times because you are still able to enjoy life. You may feel guilty if you laugh. You may feel guilty if you hear of something that he loved. And a million things may remind you of the person that you lost that you cared deeply about. And there is not really a lot you can do to prevent things from reminding you about the person you lost. Whether it's an advert because school's coming up, and it's not targeted at you, but it feels like it's targeted at you, and it hurts. But if you avoid those things, and if you avoid dealing with the hurt and the loss and the pain, it may not be the best option. And it can be very, very difficult dealing with grief. I personally don't know anyone else who has lost someone of that age. And I mean, I'd known him 15 years, and I loved him like my own because I never wanted a child of my own, because I never wanted my mental health issues that I've experienced since childhood. Suspecting there's possibly a genetic component for that, I've never wanted to pass on my genetics to someone else who may suffer those issues, because it's not enjoyable. It causes stress, and it just doesn't help in life, generally. So anyway, my gran, my mum's adoptive mother, was a great inspiration to me, and one of the reasons I basically wanted to adopt someone was because she told me there's so many people in this world who give up kids for adoption because of various factors, and you can't really blame them most of the time. And there's all these kids that are available for adoption, and people who cannot be parents often will try going down IVF routes and things like that and all the rest of it, leaving these poor kids who are orphaned or partially orphaned for no fault of their own, with no hope for the future. Anyway, my hope for the future was to leave a legacy, leave something for Craig. That was his name. And that wasn't to be. So you kind of lose purpose in your life for a while. I mean, you know, what do you work for? You work for things you care about. If you don't care about anything, what's the point? And this is where it gets tricky, because some people will be religious and they'll give you a reason as to what the point is in life. I am not religious. I would say I'm more towards agnostic or atheist, but because of the respect for my gran, and because I discussed it with her, I'm going to go with humanist, because I care about people. I care about animals, I care about the world, and I care about people, and I don't want people being assholes to each other. I think there are too many followers of Christ who do not follow Christ and do not follow Christ's teachings and seem to be completely oblivious to the life of Christ as it's portrayed in the various different versions of the Bibles. But I'm not religious. As to what the point in life is, I don't see any point to life at all. I never have. I don't think that's necessarily a problem. Because if there is no point to life, you might as well just enjoy it, mightn't you? In computer games, they suck you right in. They will take you away from life's problems. They can be very addictive. This is not necessarily a good solution to the things you have if you're having difficulty facing problems in life, but if you need a break, they say a change is as good as rest, and a change like playing a computer game instead of being stressed out by all the shit that's going on in your life, pardon my French, or in the rest of the world, might be helpful. I was born in 1977. My childhood I grew up in, the Cold War was present. My parents worked at a nuclear power plant, and the nuclear power plant was a known target of Russian nukes, and the Russians have got about 5,700 nuclear weapons. So, as a child I spent a lot of time fearing that would happen. I developed bad habits like smoking and drinking too much, because what was the point? If the world's going to get blown to shit tomorrow, you might as well enjoy yourself. Clearly this was flawed logic, because it's caused me some health issues. But I've got to admit, I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I've thoroughly enjoyed gaming. And one thing I find remarkable this week is I started this week and my YouTube channel had 0.7 hours of total views, and I finished this week and my YouTube channel, let's have a look, is at 4.2 hours of views. I just hope these videos bring joy to some people. That's all I have to say. My Chinese is here. Later. Oh yeah, and why are there more guitars? Well, Mad Pete, you like guitars, don't you?